J.R. Smith just put it out there plain and loud, confirming what Cavs fans have low-key been thinking about for almost a decade now. While LeBron James, Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, and the rest of that 2016 championship squad were out in Scotland this week living it up and celebrating 10 years since that historic comeback, one major name was missing, and people noticed fast. Fans started asking questions, and JR didn't dance around it or stay quiet. He jumped right in the comments and addressed it for everybody watching. According to Smith, Kyrie Irving was invited. No confusion there. But here's the wild part. He never replied. No text back. No call. No, I can't make it. Nothing at all. Just straight silence from someone who was once right in the middle of that championship run. If you've been paying attention since around 2017, this probably doesn't feel completely random. The signs were always there, little by little, but what's coming out now? This takes things to a whole different level. This isn't just about skipping a golf trip. This is about the same guy who hit one of the coldest shots in NBA Finals history, suddenly going ghost on the teammates who were right there beside him in that moment. Think about that for a second. Kyrie isn't just any former player from that roster. He's tied to the biggest moment in that franchise's history forever. Every single June, Cleveland runs it back. The shot over Curry, LeBron's chase down block, the celebration, the trophy. That moment belonged to all of them for years. But now one of the biggest pieces of that story is missing, and not quietly either. The people who were actually there making it clear this wasn't some scheduling issue or bad timing. So now it's time to really break this down. What happened, how things got this far, and why this situation runs way deeper than just a missed group chat. Let's stick to what we actually know. Earlier this week, Tristan Thompson posted a photo with LeBron, Junior Smith, Kevin Love, Channing Frye, and Richard Jefferson all together in the UK, celebrating that 2016 title anniversary. The caption kept it simple. The group chat finally linked up. That's it. But behind that simple line was a full 5-day experience. Golf, dinners, luxury watching, the whole vibe. This wasn't casual. This was planned out. NBA on ESPN reposted the picture, and almost instantly the comments started flooding in with the same question. Where's Kyrie? J.R. Smith saw it and didn't let it slide. He replied directly, shutting everything down with missing none. He was invited and ghosted us all, so stop with that BS. He didn't even have to say Kyrie's name. Everybody already knew who he was talking about. There's only one absence from that squad big enough to spark that kind of reaction, and the dots connected immediately. Now, sure, Kyrie himself hasn't come out with his side or explained anything publicly. That part is still missing. But when someone like JR, who was in that locker room, part of that bond, and clearly involved in organizing this, comes out and says the invite was sent and ignored, that hits different. That's not guessing or rumors. That's someone speaking from direct experience, finally putting it out there. And don't forget, this wasn't some random last-minute plan either. According to their own posts, this was a full 5-day trip centered around Lomond Golf Club in Scotland. We're talking organized schedules, reservations, coordinated plans. This took effort. People had to line things up, send invites early, and lock everything in. This wasn't a quick, "You free this weekend?" message. That's what makes Kyrie's silence stand out even more. Skipping a random hangout? That happens all the time. But going quiet on a full international trip that was clearly planned in advance, that's a different type of message, whether intentional or not. And let's be real about who we're talking about here. Kyrie Irving wasn't some role player who passed through for a season. This is a former #1 pick, a 4-time All-Star in Cleveland, and the guy who delivered one of the most iconic shots the finals has ever seen. That moment plays on repeat every year like it's a holiday in that city. If there was anyone fans expected to show up for that Scotland trip, it was him. No question. So now, the real issue isn't just, why didn't Kyrie show up? It's deeper than that. What actually went down between these guys to make something as simple as a reunion feel this tense and complicated? Because situations like this don't just happen overnight. To really understand it, you have to go all the way back to where everything changed. The moment that made them champions and locked their names into NBA history forever. June 2016, Oracle Arena, Game 7 of the NBA Finals. The Cavaliers were staring at a 3-1 deficit against a Golden State Warriors team that had just made history with 73 wins. Most analysts already had the trophy mentally handed over before the series even really settled in. Cleveland hadn't seen a major sports championship in over 50 years. And once they fell into that 3-1 hole, people across the country had already written them off completely. But LeBron James and Kyrie Irving weren't following that script at all. Game 5 flipped everything. With their backs against the wall, both of them dropped 40 points each, becoming the first teammates in finals history to do it in the same game. That wasn't just a win. That was a warning shot to the entire league that something serious was building. Cleveland took Game 5, then handled Game 6, and suddenly everything came down to one final night in Oakland. Game 7, tied at 89, less than a minute left. Every possession felt like life or death. This is the exact moment that locked Kyrie Irving into basketball history forever. With under a minute on the clock, Kyrie sized up Stephen Curry, a two-time MVP at the time, and pulled up right in his face. No hesitation, no fear, just straight confidence. He knocked down the three that gave Cleveland the lead for good. With 53 seconds left, that shot didn't just change a game, it ended a 52-year championship drought for the entire city. LeBron had the legendary chase down block that everyone replays nonstop, but make no mistake, that shot from Kyrie was the dagger. Sit with that moment for a second, because it still doesn't feel real. This wasn't some open look or lucky bounce. This was a 24-year-old guard, isolated one-on-one, season on the line, rising up against one of the greatest shooters ever and delivering without blinking. He pulled up, released it clean, and already knew it was good. That single play is the kind of moment that gets replayed for generations. Coaches break it down, fans debate it, and the league never forgets it. It's also the kind of moment that should tie players together for life. Look at what that moment created. LeBron James, the hometown superstar who came back to fulfill a promise under insane pressure. Kevin Love, who dealt with heavy criticism all season, stepping up defensively in the final seconds to help seal it. And Kyrie Irving, the one who hit the shot that will live forever in Cleveland history. That right there is the foundation everybody is talking about now. That's why this Scotland reunion wasn't just a casual golf trip. It was supposed to be deeper than that, a celebration of everything those guys went through together to reach the top. And that's exactly why Kyrie's absence hits so hard. Because when you're that guy, the one who hit that shot, and everybody else from that night is together celebrating it, your absence doesn't go unnoticed. People see it, people question it, and eventually the truth starts coming out, whether anyone planned for it or not. So, how did things go from teammates dropping 40 each in the finals to he was invited and ghosted us all, so stop with that BS in less than 10 years? That kind of shift doesn't just happen randomly. This is where things start to get messy. And honestly, a lot of people don't remember this part clearly. The public story always sounded simple. Kyrie wanted out of LeBron's shadow, asked for a trade, and moved on. Clean, easy, no deeper questions. But the deeper reports tell a completely different story. One where Kyrie didn't just wake up one day wanting out. Instead, it started with him believing LeBron wanted him gone according to ESPN's Jackie McMullen. Kyrie became convinced that LeBron was pushing for a trade involving him, possibly for players like Damian Lillard or Chris Paul, even before Kyrie made any public move. That belief didn't come out of nowhere either. Around the 2017 draft, there were real discussions happening behind the scenes. Reports suggested a potential deal sending Kyrie to Phoenix for Eric Bledsoe, with Cleveland flipping assets to land Paul George from Indiana. This wasn't just talk. This was something being explored seriously. Owner Dan Gilbert reportedly told LeBron he'd move forward with a deal like that if LeBron committed long-term to Cleveland. But LeBron didn't give that commitment, and the deal fell apart. Still, Kyrie found out those conversations even happened in the first place. From Kyrie's point of view, that was everything because, in his mind, there's no way the front office goes that far into trade talks without LeBron being involved somehow. That moment right there is what many insiders point to as the real fracture in the relationship. Now, to be fair, LeBron has always said he never pushed for Kyrie to be traded. And there are reports backing him up, saying he actually told the front office to keep Kyrie. But by the time those details came out, it didn't really matter anymore. The damage was already done. Kyrie had already made his decision based on what he believed was happening behind closed doors. And that belief, that's what reportedly led him to request a trade just weeks later, setting everything else into motion. And it wasn't just about one trade rumor either. According to multiple Cavs reporters who were actually around that locker room, the situation between Kyrie and LeBron was way more tense behind closed doors than fans ever realized. There were moments during the 2017 playoffs where Kyrie reportedly went days barely speaking to anyone at practice. Think about that. This is during a finals run, and one of your biggest stars is completely locked in his own space, not really engaging with the team like that. At the same time, there was frustration coming from LeBron's side too. Reports said there were questions about Kyrie playing through leg injuries, and some comments made publicly were taken as subtle shots at his toughness. That only made things worse, because now it's not just internal tension. It's starting to spill out where everyone can see it. But it went deeper than injuries or small comments. Kyrie was reportedly growing tired of how much control LeBron had within the organization. We're talking roster moves, offensive systems, the whole structure running through LeBron. For Kyrie, it started to feel like everything revolved around one voice, and that didn't sit right with him. By the time the trade finally went down in the summer of 2017, sending Kyrie to Boston, the reaction from LeBron wasn't what people expected. Former head coach Tyronn Lue later described the moment LeBron found out. He was at an event doing autograph signings for his foundation when the news popped up on TV. And right there in front of everyone, LeBron reportedly just froze, put the marker down, sat back, and stayed quiet for several minutes, clearly caught off guard. That's not how someone reacts if they were pushing for it behind the scenes. But at the same time, it also shows something important. The relationship was already too far gone to fix. You don't get to that point overnight. This was a slow build-up, small cracks stacking on top of each other until everything finally broke apart during that offseason. Fans started noticing little things too. Subtle posts on social media that people analyzed nonstop, try to figure out who was being called out. Kyrie's farewell message to Cleveland didn't even mention LeBron by name, which definitely didn't go unnoticed. And then there were reports that Kyrie didn't even give LeBron a heads up before going to the front office with his trade request. That says everything about where things stood at that point. Whatever bond they had during the championship run, it wasn't the same anymore. Not even close. Here's the part that still feels strange to a lot of Cavs fans. When Kyrie left, there wasn't some huge emotional send-off. No big tribute, no drawn-out goodbye moment. He was just gone. For someone who hit the most important shot in franchise history, that's not how you expect things to end. That kind of exit stuck with people, and it still does. So when J.R. Smith says Kyrie ghosted the group this week, longtime fans aren't even surprised. In a lot of ways, they've seen this kind of distance before when it comes to Kyrie and that Cleveland chapter of his career. Now, fast forward to late 2022, and this is where things shift again in a major way. While playing for the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie shared a link on social media to a documentary that drew heavy criticism for containing anti-Semitic material. The reaction was immediate and intense. The Nets suspended him for at least 5 games without pay. Nike ended their business relationship with him, shutting down his signature shoe rollout. The Anti-Defamation League got involved, and suddenly this wasn't just a basketball story anymore. It was everywhere. When reporters asked Kyrie directly about his beliefs, his early responses didn't clear things up right away, which made the situation even more heated. It took a few days before he issued a clear apology. But by then, the situation had already grown into one of the biggest controversies of his career. Then people turned to LeBron, waiting to see how he would respond, and his answer caught a lot of attention. He said Kyrie caused some harm to a lot of people and made it clear that promoting harmful ideas toward any group isn't something he respects or supports. Coming from someone with their history, that statement landed heavy. A lot of people close to Kyrie reportedly felt like LeBron didn't fully stand behind him in that moment, even if LeBron was speaking more broadly about the situation rather than attacking Kyrie personally. But here's the part that doesn't always get talked about as much. Just a few days later, after the Nets gave Kyrie a list of requirements to return, things like sensitivity training and meetings with community leaders, LeBron spoke up again. This time, he pushed back on how far things were going. He said Kyrie had already apologized and should be allowed to play, calling the requirements excessive. So now you've got LeBron in a middle position, criticizing what happened, but also questioning the punishment. He didn't fully defend Kyrie, and he didn't completely turn on him either. He stayed right in between. And depending on how you look at it, that middle ground either made things better or made the gap between them even wider. And in a situation that personal and emotional, staying in the middle can hit just as hard as choosing no side at all. For Kyrie, dealing with one of the most public and isolating moments of his career, that kind of response from someone he once won a championship with reportedly didn't feel like real support. Now, stack that on top of everything that already happened back in 2017. The trade talks, the locker room tension, the quiet way things ended in Cleveland. And it starts to make more sense why he wouldn't feel pulled to jump on a flight to Scotland for a reunion, even one tied to such a huge moment in his career. Because this story isn't just about one incident or one misunderstanding. When you zoom out, there's a pattern here, and it goes back even further than most people think. Even before that 2016 championship run, there were already signs things weren't perfectly aligned. Reports from Cavs insiders have suggested Kyrie wasn't fully on board with LeBron returning to Cleveland in the first place. Some sources even claimed he didn't think it was necessary and wasn't shy about saying that in the locker room. There's even a story that gets brought up a lot. LeBron, while still in Miami, reportedly told Kyrie something like, "Keep doing what you're doing. You never know. I could be back here one day." And the story goes that Kyrie later walked into the locker room and told teammates they didn't need that kind of help. If that really reflects how things felt early on, that's a wild way for a partnership like that to begin. Because from the outside, everyone assumed it was built on mutual respect from day one. But behind the scenes, it might not have been that simple at all. Then you've got the pressure that comes with playing next to someone like LeBron. Kyrie has talked about this openly in interviews over the years. He's described it as a completely different level where expectations instantly shoot to the top, no matter how young you are or how much you're still developing your own game. At one point during a Twitch stream, he broke it down in a real way, saying it was never about disliking playing with LeBron, but more about knowing when it was time to move on and do his own thing. He even said people just needed to accept that. He's also been honest about something a lot of players don't say out loud. He wished he had more control over where his career started. He admitted he would have liked the chance to choose his own path instead of having it decided through the draft process. And if you look at everything since Cleveland, that mindset shows up again and again. Boston didn't go the way people expected. Brooklyn had its own wave of chaos. Dallas has been more stable, but even there, Kyrie has continued to move on his own terms, not anyone else's expectations. On top of that, he's had to deal with real setbacks too. A serious ACL injury wiped out his entire 2025-2026 season, forcing him to rebuild not just his game, but his body from the ground up. That kind of situation changes how players look at everything. Priorities, time, relationships, all of it. So, when you put it all together, the bigger picture starts to come into focus. Kyrie Irving has spent years trying to define himself beyond just being the guy who played with LeBron. And every time that chapter comes back up, whether it's old trade drama, public controversies, or now this reunion, it pulls him right back into a version of the story he's been trying to move past. Now, here's the part that doesn't get nearly as much attention because it's not as loud or dramatic as a ghosted headline. But it might explain more than anything else. While his former teammates were out in Scotland celebrating and posting reunion photos, Kyrie was somewhere completely different. He was reportedly at the NBA Top 100 camp, getting on the court and playing one-on-one with some of the top high school prospects in the country. Think about that timing. This was one of his first real public appearances after the ACL injury. And instead of using that moment to reconnect with old teammates, he chose to spend it working directly with the next generation of players. That choice lines up with a pattern people don't always talk about enough, because Kyrie has built a reputation over the years for showing up for young people and communities without needing a spotlight on it. He's quietly helped students dealing with tuition issues, supported families going through difficult situations, and donated significant amounts to schools that needed real resources. And a lot of the time, those actions didn't come with headlines or big announcements attached. So, while the reunion story is grabbing attention, there's another side to this that's a lot more low-key but just as real. Kyrie's focus, especially at this stage of his career, doesn't always line up with nostalgia moments or public celebrations. And that might explain more about his absence than any comments section ever could. There's the time Kyrie helped fund clean drinking water efforts out in Flint, Michigan. That wasn't small either. That was real impact where people actually needed it. Then you've got the situation where he stepped in and covered legal defense costs for a woman fighting to keep her home from developers trying to take it from her. And it doesn't stop there. He also contributed to building a school and an orphanage across Nigeria and Ghana, places a lot of NBA stars don't even think about, let alone invest in like that. That's not surface-level giving. That's long-term impact. He's even made low-key visits to schools and communities with no cameras around. One of the most powerful moments was when he spent a full day connecting with students on the Pine Ridge Reservation after reconnecting with his family roots tied to the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. That wasn't about headlines or social media posts. That was real presence. None of those moments were tied to celebrations, anniversaries, or big public events. That was Kyrie choosing to show up where he felt it mattered most without needing attention for it. So, when you step back and look at everything together, the image that starts to form isn't just someone holding on to old drama or avoiding a reunion out of spite. It might actually be someone who has built a completely different set of priorities since leaving Cleveland. A player who, even while recovering from serious injury, would rather spend time mentoring younger athletes and giving back than revisiting a chapter of his life that came with both massive success and real tension. Now, that doesn't cancel out what J.R. Smith said at all. It doesn't erase the history between Kyrie and LeBron either, but it does add a layer that a lot of people aren't really considering in this conversation. Kyrie in his early 30s is not the same person he was in his early 20s. Back then, he was the young star who hit one of the biggest shots ever while still figuring out who he wanted to be outside of that spotlight. Now, he's moving differently, thinking differently, and clearly valuing different things. Whether someone sees that as real growth or just a way to avoid an uncomfortable situation probably depends on how they already felt about him coming into this whole story. So, what does that leave everything now? There are a few ways to look at it, and none of them are simple. For Cavs fans, this one is going to hit no matter what. That 2016 championship team means everything in Cleveland. It's not just a roster. It's history. It's emotion. It's something people waited over 50 years to experience. So, seeing one of the most important pieces of that team feel distant enough to skip a 10-year reunion completely, that says a lot, even if people don't want to fully admit it. From a fan perspective, watching the player who hit the actual game-winning shot stay disconnected from the celebration is always going to leave a certain feeling behind. Fair or unfair, that reaction is real. Then there's the LeBron and Kyrie dynamic, which just refuses to fully close. A lot of people thought that chapter was wrapped up years ago, especially after 2019, when Kyrie reportedly reached out to LeBron to apologize, and LeBron publicly appreciated it. Since then, there's always been some level of speculation about them teaming up again. Whether it was talk about the Lakers in the past, or more recent conversations tied to Dallas. Especially with younger talent and big names floating around, the idea never fully disappeared. Now, does missing a reunion like this completely shut that door? Not necessarily, but it definitely raises new questions about how strong that connection really is behind the scenes. Because it's one thing to be cool publicly, exchange respect, and keep things professional. It's another thing entirely to show up in those real-life moments that actually reflect where relationships stand. And maybe the biggest takeaway from all of this is what it says about Kyrie right now. At this stage in his career, his focus doesn't seem to be on reliving old moments, even historic ones. It looks like he's more locked in on what's ahead, who he can impact next, and how he wants to define this phase of his life on his own terms. A player coming off a torn ACL, trying to prove he's still elite going into a huge season, decided to spend his off-season grinding with the next generation instead of reliving old glory. That choice says a lot. It could be someone who's grown past needing validation from the past, or someone still dealing with unfinished emotion from a chapter he's been trying to move on from for years. Honestly, it might be a mix of both. People aren't that simple, and Kyrie Irving has built his entire career on being unpredictable and moving differently from everyone else. So, here's where everything stands right now. J.R. Smith made it clear. Kyrie Irving was invited to the Cavs' 10-year championship reunion and never responded. That comes after years of trade rumors, locker room tension, a public controversy where LeBron's response landed somewhere in the middle, and a pattern of Kyrie focusing more on family, faith, and giving back rather than looking backward. When you really break it all down, this isn't just about missing a golf trip in Scotland. This is about a player who spent years trying to step out of someone else's shadow while dealing with a relationship that's been complicated way longer than most people realized. The 2016 banner will always hang in Cleveland. That shot will always replay every single June like it just happened yesterday. But those moments don't always tell the full story behind the scenes, and this week gave a rare look at that reality. And yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Kyrie really ghosted his former teammates like that? Or do you feel like there's more going on behind the scenes that hasn't come out yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.